In today's video, I'm going to walk you through my design process and what I do when I'm designing a new collection, how long it takes, and even where I get my inspiration. So if you want to learn more and you're interested to design your collection, then keep watching this video. Hey guys, it's Stephanie, your host of the Start Your Fashion Business channel. If you want to learn about all things fashion business, then you have come to the right place. If you are new around here, don't forget to subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss any of my videos. So make sure to turn on the bell notification. And also check out my older content if you want more fashion business tips. So I've been in the fashion industry for over 12 years now. I'm a sustainable brand owner. I have a brand called This Is a Love Song, and I'm also an ethical garment producer, producing not just for my own brand, but for many different brands from all over the world. So I do that through my company called Tile Studio, and I'm also a fashion business coach. So if you're interested to learn more about running your own successful fashion business, then definitely check out my program, and there's all these links in the description box below if you want to check that out after you watch this video. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through my design process. I'm going to tell you how long it takes for me to design a new collection, where I get my inspiration from, and then I'm also going to show you my new collection, which is just behind me right there. So I'm really excited because this is the collection that we just launched for Women's Day, which was on the 8th of March. And so this collection is called the Higher Self Collection. And if you don't know a lot about my brand, it's called This Is a Love Song, and it's all about female empowerment. So we're not just empowering the women that wear our clothing, but also the women that make our clothing. As you may know, everything that I do is ethically produced in my own studio in Bali, Indonesia. And this is so important for me because even when I started my brand, I knew that I did not want to produce anywhere outside of Bali, Indonesia, because if I was going to create a fashion brand, I wasn't going to make a brand that would allow anyone to suffer. So I wanted to make sure that I could ethically produce my pieces and be able to give the workers a fair wage and, of course, fair treatment. And that's how Tile Studio was born. And this is where we create This Is a Love Song and all the other brands that I work with. So the Higher Self collection was released for Women's Day, and we knew that we wanted to create a collection with that theme in mind. So how I actually design a collection is I brainstorm for a concept, and I can brainstorm something for either an upcoming collection or even a collection that I'm going to drop at the end of the year. I just let my creative juices flow. So typically what I do is I start mood boarding. So that's what I first do when I start designing. I hop onto Pinterest, I read trend reports, and I come up with a mood board, which is a direction of what I want to do. So I come up with some shapes that I want to incorporate, some colorways, as well as maybe some print ideas, and that's how I build a collection. From there on, I start to break down the pieces because I need to know how many pieces I want to do. And the way that I do this is that I visualize the whole collection hanging off a rack, pretty much like how everything is hanging right here behind me. And I start really imagining how all those pieces would look like next to each other. Even though my brand is primarily online, this type of visualization still helps me narrow down a collection to make something really cohesive and really, really strong. So for the Higher Self collection, I knew that I wanted to use a color that was muted, but that was also new, and I felt like mint was very, very on trend. But I also saw that Pantone released the new Pantone color of the year, which for this year, they actually released two colors. So one color I was really drawn to, and that is the Ultimate Gray. So we used the Ultimate Gray in this collection as well, at least a little bit of a touch, because I knew that I wanted to break up the green. Now I also felt like we needed to incorporate a print for this collection, but we didn't actually make a new print. We took a print from another collection called the Daydream collection that worked really, really well. So normally when I'm designing, I also look at past sales history to see what other pieces did really well, what colors did really well, what type of fabrication did well, so that I can incorporate it in the new collection as well. Because if something works, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. And this is something that's really important to continue your brand story. So for the Higher Soft collection, we also reintroduced some older pieces that are our best-selling pieces, such as the Piper sets and even the Zuri top and the Zuri shorts, because those were super popular. And I also am going to drop a bigger collection in April. So the Higher Soft collection was just going to be a little mini capsule collection. So typically at this point, I would break down all the pieces that I want to incorporate in this collection. And even though we only ended up coming out with 7 sets, we actually designed maybe 10 or 12 things, and then we edited our selection down. And I always do this because I think it's much better to over design, and that way, even if you're not going to release everything, you would already have other designs for the future. So at this point, everything would already be drawn out. Now again, if I'm using any existing styles from an older collection, that means I already have the technical drawings of these pieces. So I would make an entire presentation and I would put the pieces next to each other so I have a very good visual overview. And once everything looks great and they aesthetically combine well, then I would create the tech packs. Now, this is a very important step because you don't want to start making a pattern block or start making samples without a tech pack. So we would translate everything into this technical packet, which is pretty much a blueprint for each of your designs. This is where we will break everything down, from all of the measurements to where we will add the embroidery and how tall that embroidery is going to be, from the color of the lining to the Pantone colors that we have to dye. Pretty much everything is in this technical packet. Now, once we've created that, then we would have a design meeting. We would make sure everything is in order before we start patterning. Now, thankfully, we have an in-house pattern maker, so that's the beauty of having your own studio, because as soon as my designs are done, I can just go to my pattern maker and ask him to make all the pattern blocks. Now, once we create all the pattern blocks, that's where the fun starts, because he will then create it into a prototype. Now, this prototype doesn't necessarily have to be in the final fabric. Sometimes I'll make it in a similar fabric, especially if I'm still making up my mind about a certain fabrication. But the prototype is basically to perfect the fit. Now, normally during this time, what I would do is I would also send fabrics to the dye house, because all of that needs to be dyed. And they don't just dye a roll right away. They would dye it first on 10 by 10 centimeter swatches to ensure that the color that they've dyed it in is correct. Because again, sometimes what you see on the screen is not really going to translate, since all the fabrics have a different absorbency. So once we send that over, it can take typically around 1 to 2 weeks for us to even receive the swatches. So I make sure that everything happens simultaneously so that we are on schedule, because when you're designing a collection, there are so many moving parts and you want to make sure that everything is happening at the same time and at a good pace. So in a perfect world, I would receive my prototypes back and they're perfect. I would receive all my swatches back and they look amazing. Perhaps at this point, I would even have a strike off for the print, or even swatches for the embroidery to see how they look. So once I have all of these parts, I would lay it out. I would make sure everything is approved before I make the first sample, which would actually be in the right fabrication, in the right color, with all the right trims and all the right detailing. Now, this is really important because you want to make sure that everything translates well before you approve it to go into production. So typically, by the time this happens, about 2 months has passed, at least. Sometimes this can take even longer because, if you're designing a collection that consists of 15 pieces, it's going to take at least a month for you to even design that, to even come up with the concept, to draw it out, to do your research on the fabrics, to see what is available. Because sometimes even when you're designing and you're not thinking about the fabrics, then you're not thinking 5 steps ahead, because oftentimes fabrics will really dictate your designs as well and the results. So typically it would take me at least 2 months to create an entire collection and finish its sampling. But that just means that I'm really working up to speed, and then I'm also doing a smaller collection. So obviously, if you're new at this or you're designing a bigger collection, then this might take longer for you because your manufacturer might also have their schedule. So you really want to allow as much time as possible for you, especially if you are new at this. Besides that, I would also have some other tips, such as really having your technical drawings and your technical packets done. If you are going to make a collection and you're going to work with a manufacturer, you should not skip your tech packs. And this is really, really important because you're going to want them to follow everything according to your instructions so that your designs come out the way you want them to come out. You also want to make sure that you're designing with fabrics that are always going to be available. This is something that I always see happen with new designers. They don't know that all fabrics are not available all year round. So even when I was designing this collection, I had to eliminate some styles because those styles were just not going to work because the fabrics that I wanted were actually unavailable when I was sampling. Now, of course, I could have booked the fabric and put a deposit and at least taken it off the market, but at that point, I wasn't even sure that I wanted to use that fabric, so I wasn't ready to make that investment. But then when my prototypes came back and I actually did like the fabric and we contacted the supplier, they were out of it, and this happens all the time. So my tip to you is don't be married to a certain fabrication. And if you do like that fabric, make sure that you have a plan B, because in the fashion industry, if you don't have a plan B or plan C or plan Z, then you're going to get disappointed. Now, if you're here because you're interested to have your own fashion brand, you're interested to learn how to have a custom designed fashion collection, then I also want to suggest you to check out my 8-week accelerator program. Inside the program, I will teach you everything I know about running a fashion brand, from branding to designing to sampling, production, selling, and marketing. This course is so jam-packed. So if you are interested, definitely check out the link in the description box below. So I really hope this video was really helpful for you. If you do want to check out the collection, definitely check out my website, thisisalovesong.com, because I love this collection and I would love to know what you think about it as well. So let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to follow me on Instagram too if you want daily fashion business tips. And as always, I will see you next week.